be able to read? Yeah, okay. Make your way back to your seats. Okay, we're going to start a discussion on the origins of life, DNA, and look at the foundational issues to help people get a bigger and better understanding of their own bodies, planet Earth, because everybody has a lot of different facts, and it's kind of a lot easier, instead of remembering all these facts, to understand the basic principles behind these facts and really understand what's going on. So I'm hoping that this presentation will turn the levels of understanding up a few notches and help people to get a better understanding of really how beautiful the body is, how it works internally. And when you see some of the things I'm going to show you today, it's going to be really almost mind-boggling, you know. So a better world basically begins with a better you, through better health. So that's what this whole conference is about today, making a better world, because it all starts with us internally, you know, our own bodies, our own dispositions, our own consciousness, if you will. My beginnings on my journey in understanding the basic DNA and so on led me on a trip to Siberia, where the largest polar lakes, similar to the Great Lakes that we're surrounded by here, exist. It holds 24% of all the water in the world. A lot of people don't know that. But everybody, I think, will agree that we're made from water. But we know very little about this. We know very little about water and how we're made from this wonderful substance. What we do know is that the Bible tells us that we lived a lot longer long ago. Okay, and we've basically been declining. So Willie, the gentleman that put this whole thing together, explained to me that just recently that's starting to reverse. And I think a lot of that is just because the public is becoming more educated. You know, we have the internet, we have access to information, and information is knowledge, power, consciousness, and healing, right? So, so that's a good thing. Now, a lot of people don't know that our DNA is our blueprint. So, if you make a very complex building like the Empire State Building, there's a blueprint, and that tells the engineers how to fix it and so on. So, we have a blueprint which is the same. And it's a copy in each one of our cells, that blueprint. So there's actually a large yards of information if you were to open it all up within a tiny nucleus of every cell. So every cell has the blueprint of the other cell. What makes one cell different from the other is how the information is expressed. And that's called gene expression. Not to be confused with evolution, because I really don't believe that there is any such thing. I believe that there's, you know, advanced design after advanced design in the waters of these magnificent pole lakes. So we have perfect DNA, say, in the beginning of time, but over time we have DNA damage, and that's caused by radiation, pollution, chemicals, even the sun. Now our body can correct most of this, and a lot of this is single-stranded DNA breaks, and that's very easy to fix because you have two strands that are identical. They're running in opposite directions, which I'm going to talk about later, but they're still, the information is identical. And that allows for a parity check. But when you get into hard radiations and some of this stuff that people are talking about with cell phones, and I think some people mentioned also about the importance of really organic farming, and as opposed to vertical farming, which basically brings plants off the grounded earth, which is the proper frequency. You know, you can run into the risk of having more complex DNA breakages, which are very hard and sometimes you know, impossible for the body to pick up, because they're not natural things that are supposed to occur, you know, ordinarily. And when you have those things, they can travel vertically from mother to daughter. They can actually affect the placenta, like what we've seen in Zika virus, which affects the placenta. And that means it can go vertical from generation to generation and be magnified. So that's why it's really important that we understand these things so that we can get back to nature, which is balance. Because really when it comes right down to disease is in essence out of balance or out of sequence energy. And we're going to talk about what in sequence energy is as well. Now the other thing that can happen that can cause DNA damage is virus. So here we're showing that, a picture of the virus. So when you have DNA damage, it can result over time to a cancer. Now you might know that you have DNA damage that's basically can be building up to cause a cancer because it could take a very long time and it could have a viral or another pathogenic origin point. So, or it could be an autoimmune disease, or it could be basically just premature aging. So we're all in a way aging prematurely because we're all carrying some sort of this which is causing problems on the repair side. So, and this can affect our personalities. It can make us angry. It can make us do things that we really don't want to do, and we're not happy that we did them after because we know better. Because God's good, so our core is good. Okay. So, but these things are affecting. It's the reason we need a police force. If everything was perfectly disease-free, I firmly believe that we wouldn't need any governing body. It would be natural order, and natural order means God is good, and we're all automatically can't even think a negative thought, which is where we really want to get to. So. Now, viral DNA, inflammation, aging, you know, it's all things we want to counter. And the people at Northern Nutrition know this, and they know certain herbs do these things. So the other thing that we know is that intelligence is declining. So right now, this is a global graph on IQ, okay? And that really means that a lot of things that have been happening with vaccinations, with radiation, with double-stranded DNA breaks are basically affecting our consciousness, our IQ levels, our ability to understand, okay? And that's really not good because our own consciousness is a reflection of the world that we build. So we really have to understand that we have an impact on our own world and how we view it if it's being destroyed in a way by improper approaches to healthcare, then that's something that we have to take very seriously and counter immediately. So, and here's how people feel sometimes. Now, there's been a lot of money spent on a lot of different approaches, but they're almost always addressing the symptoms. Never are they talking about DNA and how to basically clean the DNA, which is what we're going to talk about today. So you have basically, big efforts, but they're going in the wrong direction in a lot of cases. So how do we clean the DNA? Well, on the left, you're going to see DNA basically bunched up, and that's called non-expressed DNA. The problem is that sometimes in that non-expressed area, you can have disease. And if you have disease that's not expressed, that means your immune system can't see it. So even though God gave us all a perfect immune system, if it can't see the underlying root cause, it can't mount an immune response. But here's the good news. Certain herbs actually open that up, and then it moves to what you see on the right, which is relaxed DNA. So you see here, okay, and that is actually readable, okay. So your body can read that information, and if there's disease in that region now because you took the proper herbal regimen, then now your body can start to mount an immune response. A lot of people don't have patience for this also. So these natural things didn't happen right away, and they also can't correct right away. And your body is basically set up that it can only repair in perfect circumstances 1 million neurons per day, but you have trillions of neurons. So you have to also be patient with the people at Northern, your own approach, because it's not supposed to happen fast. That's your own protection also, so that if you do something wrong, you don't actually hurt yourself too much. You see? So it's not supposed to happen quickly, but it's supposed to happen gradually. Now, if you're on the right protocol, if you have a problem and it's showing up through expression, which is the best way, you basically letting your body read the disease at the DNA level and mounting an immune response. Your body makes a decision, and this is actually published by our own National Institute of Health, the decision-making process that your body goes through, which is basically a normal cell or a cancer cell, okay? No, And a normal cell can be repaired. But it all starts with knowledge, and the knowledge needs to be fed into the immune system through HDAC inhibition. And that means being able to see. So I'm showing here that once you express it, it's like your body has X-ray vision now. Now it can see the underlying root, trapped out of sequence energy, which is by definition disease. When things are working properly, you have a little factory. And this factory basically takes information in the form of DNA, A, B, these are your letters, which, by the way, you might not realize it, but you're only made out of 20 amino acids, okay, which is 20 words, right? So your whole body is made out of 3 letters that make up each amino acid, okay? And they're basically fed through something called a ribosome, but really it's a factory, like a tape. And the food that you eat goes in, and what comes out is a protein. So if you're diabetic and you're not making insulin, it's because that little ticker tape going in had something wrong with it. So that protein coming out is inflammatory. That means your body has to get rid of it. That means that as you're eating sugar, your body's making insulin that's really a poison, which is your own inflammation, basically being created by your own factories, and then it's got to be filtered out by your kidneys, which is why eventually you have proteinuria, kidney failure, dialysis. Okay? So that's why you really never ever want defective code, okay, on the DNA coming through the ribosome, which is why we really have to always try to clean our DNA. So another way to look at it, everybody here cooks probably somewhat. You think of it as your DNA is a cookbook, which is you, okay? And that information is transcribed and then translated into proteins, okay? So instead of placing Band-Aids on the situation, it's much better to address the root cause, which is basically the code. Now, certain herbs are NF-κB inhibitors, which basically looks at the whole gamut. So the advantage of herbs, in some cases, is that you can really do a lot with 1 herb or 2 herbs, okay? The advantage of the disadvantage is that maybe you can't get enough of that herb in the system. The advantage of pharmaceuticals is that they can take part of that herb and then they could really, amp it up, stronger, okay? So I'm hopeful that at some point in the future that the 2 technologies and the 2 entities combine to make it more synergistic, because they can work together instead of being so opposed, right? So basically what I'm talking about is bringing in sequence energy and using the strengths of some of the pharmaceuticals to make a better overall end result. It could definitely happen. It's been studied. This is my own personal blood work. I have to explain this. I had Epstein's bar, really high numbers, but when I started expressing it, it showed even higher on my immune system. Then approximately 9 months later, it dropped, okay? And when it dropped, I ended up getting a PCR of a negative on that particular guy. Okay, I also had a cold sore virus, but it wasn't expressing at all. But here you can see it's expressing, it's starting to climb, just like it did here, only less. And that's good, because that means my body's seeing something I didn't even know I had. That's good. So, and it's very good on the Epstein's bar, because when that dropped in half, there was no more genetic information of that particular virus in my blood. So this stuff, what we're talking about, natural approaches, might take a long time. You can see that took months. But the end result was my energy level went up. It allows me to even be here today, otherwise I wouldn't be able to think. I was actually, not even close to being able to speaking like this when I was injured, let's say. So Revelation 22:2, the leaves of the trees were for the healing of the nations. Not really talked about too much in most of the places I've attended church-wise, but really it's true. Most of the things that are studied by pharmaceutical are basically the leaves, the flowers, okay? Even the barks of the trees, okay? And there's a lot of knowledge there. And what's really wonderful about nature is that it's a perfectly sequenced ladder. So you can see this ladder here in this, okay? But when you look at planet Earth, instead of thinking of what we were taught, think of it as energy from light, which is the middle and the beginning, like God said there was light, and then it fuses deeper in space like a slingshot that keeps going back and forth, only each time, everybody remember the Roadrunner? You know? Except the slingshot goes further and further all the time, and then the further it goes, the more energy, but always it's in step, lower to higher, like a musical note. Now I'm going to show you that that's true in a little while. But the reason that's so important, and the reason we can eat almost anything under the sun, is because it's all perfectly sequenced by the same vacuum energy reactor. And I know that people aren't taught this in school, but it's really important, because once you understand that everything's perfectly sequenced by Mother Earth, and she's a perfect vacuum energy reactor from light, when God said let there be light, it's true, which is, you know, even our eye is a little vacuum energy reactor. It's negative in the middle, the cornea is actually positive, it's throwing a field. That field gets information back, that's how we see. The planet works the same way, it can see you. And it's really a lot of evidence that shows this. So I'm showing Earth as a different model, and this exists, but it's not really taught. And basically it's a metallic hydrogen core with a vacuum energy reactor inside of it, throwing this field, which is very dynamic. And here's what the field looks like. Basically I got to show you. So basically you have circular math, which we weren't taught in school, okay? But this is the math that matches the DNA, okay? So you could take this map and you could basically work out the whole DNA strand. And how does it work? 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5 is throwing the field, right? And guess what? 8 and 1 equals 9. 7 and 2 equals 9. 6 and 3 equals 9. 4 and 5 equal 9. All of the whole numbers in vortex math reduce back to 9. And guess what 9 is? 9 is the top of the pyramid, the same pyramid like you see in Egypt. That's because this information throws a field and all the numbers come back to 9 and they're checked by 9. 9 is a check number. It's the center of the eye, if you want to think of it like that. And the 6 and 3 basically show if you're on the left or the right, which is negative positive, which is both sides of the donut, the torus, the field that I'm going to show you in a minute. So that's very interesting, because this explains DNA and the math behind it. And there's people that are working this out right now. So here it is in music. So a lot of people aren't taught music in circular, but if you take the fifths and you run them this direction, you're just going to count down. Okay? And then here, you're going to count down. So you're going to count down in fifths, and you're going to count down in fourth on this side. Up by 5, down by a 4. And that makes sense. But we don't have time to get into the details of the math, but I'm just trying to show you right now, also, if you can see that the inner circles are octaves. And that's basically an octave of the vortex math going from lower to higher. So you're going up a note, up a note, up in energy. That same perfectly sequenced energy is what makes us and the planet and all things. Okay, so here is something called a star in a jar. And what they've done is they just put frequency inside of water, okay? And at a certain frequency, the water actually creates light right at the beginning, right at that point. And that's at the beginning of, like I said, when the Lord said, let there be light, okay? It's true. He spoke it. It's a sound. It's a sound that does this. It basically made this happen. Okay, I personally think that we have a star in a jar, which is the center of the core of the Earth, basically starting off that entire vortex math sequence that is in sequence basically music and energy. Now here I'm going to prove to you that it's true, or at least in this model, you have a 9 here. Imagine this is a donut coming all the way around. Okay, so here's the 9, but 4 and 5 equal 9. Okay, here's a 9, but 1 and 8 equal 9. Here's a 9, but 2 and 7 equal 9. So you can see how this checks itself. Vortex math is perfect. It does every equation instantly. It sees everything instantly, and it checks itself. This is how your DNA is repaired. So don't be discouraged if you're in really poor health, because the information is stored. It's known. And you can get back to good just by doing what, people are starting to understand, people at Northern Nutrition. Now here, this isn't proven, but it's likely that you have layers between layers, and it's likely that they connect musically in this way, because this actually also matches. So what we're showing here, is basically the triangle, which is the pyramid, connecting between energy layers depth-wise. So not only are the layers understood within their own vortices, but they're also understood from a depth perception. Here's just another way of looking at it. It's a different set of number groups, but if you go through them all, you'll see that they always work out the way I just showed you. Here is another way of looking at Earth with this energy at the equator, basically coming back to the poles. Okay? And you're going to be really interested to know that matches how your DNA is structured. Here's how your DNA is structured. Okay, it's basically your 4 primary magnetic fields, which are histones, which control gene expression, which is basically, think of these guys here as a round amplifier, and that round amplifier is basically telling, this gene to be more expressed, or this gene because it's an insulin gene, or, all the way down the line, it tells your genes how to express themselves. Really, when you come right down to DNA, it's a hydrogen twist of information, and everything's made of hydrogen, which is the base building block, held together by a sugar phosphate backbone. Okay? So that's what I'm showing here. This is actually the DNA structure, and you can also see that one side of it's going one way, the other side is going the other way. You can see that, and these are your base pairs. Okay? And they're the same down the middle, so that's how they check each other if there's a defect. Okay? The problem is sometimes you get a clip here and a clip here, and it's not right on both sides. Okay? That makes it harder for your body to repair. Okay? That's called double-stranded DNA breaks, and some viruses do that. Here's a picture of the northern lights. It's rare, but sometimes you can actually see this energy entering Earth. Here's Lake Vostok in Antarctica, which is our current southern polar lake, which the Great Lakes were similar to. And here they're discovering new life with 14% different DNA than ever's been seen ever on planet Earth in Lake Vostok. So I really believe that what I'm saying today is correct because it's being verified by Russian scientists. This life has not existed before. So if this energy vortex is creating life in the polar lakes and we're near a polar shift and it's being verified by scientists, we have to say that this is really strong evidence on the creation side, which is water. And I had videos I wanted to play, but I don't have the time. One thing I want to just say that it's I'm really personally I speak out against geoengineering because I don't think this ice should be so thick right now in Vostok because our oxygen is here. And if oxygen is trapped, it marries with hydrogen, which I think is what's causing all the flooding on Earth right now. Because this ice should already be thawed. But that's a whole other topic. I just wanted to mention that. My name is Tim. I'm from Flawless Herbs. I'm thankful for everyone for the opportunity to explain this. I have a little bit of that DNA video. Can I play it just so people can see a little bit, or not enough time? Okay. All right, so thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Tim. Tim has done a lot of study on DNA